Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're going to give it just a few more seconds here and let everyone join, and then we will get started. All right, let's go ahead and start this webinar. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to our webinar today on navigating wastewater messaging, creating a communications campaign to influence your audience. My name is Maya Bani from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And now, before we begin, let's just go into some quick housekeeping items. During the training today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar questions dialog box anytime throughout the session. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording and any other information you may need. You can also download additional handouts from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This session has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits, but eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this session, you must attend for the entire session and register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent via email within 30 days of the webinar date. If you have any questions or need assistance, please contact smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about us, the Environmental Finance Center Network provides training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems in all U.S. states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and finance capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I'll be sharing shortly in the chat. And on that note, we can get started. I would like to introduce our presenters for today, Sarah Diefendorf, Director, and Kathleen Kirkpatrick, Senior Associate at the Capacity Collaborative. And Sarah, just give me one moment and I'll pass this over to you.
Okay, I got my fingers crossed it's going to work. Okay, we got that.
All right, I see your slide deck.
All righty, now we're going to hit play and see if it actually plays. No, you see it.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. All right, I think we're good. It defaulted back to my main screen as it always does. Okay, hopefully everything's going to advance. You can see it, right?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Good morning and afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. Welcome and thank you for attending this on a Friday. And keeping with Friday, I hope to keep this relatively light, but also entertaining, and hopefully you're going to learn something. So the first things first about messaging your audience is to identify your audience. So just a little background on why that's important is that you got to change people's minds by figuring out what's important to them. We know what's important to us, but we have to present our case on their terms. Otherwise, it doesn't really resonate with them. It's hard to get people to care about the things they just don't care about, right? So let's just start out with some generational differences when we think about who we're trying to reach. And what are the differences in, say, population size and so on? This is from a Pew Generational Research study. And if we just look at the generations by size in terms of millions, right? So boomers, our 68.59 million population born between 46 and 64. Gen X is our smallest generation at 65.37, born between 65 and 1980. Millennials between 1981 and 1996 is the largest generation, you've probably heard, 72.24 million. And the Gen Zs are also larger than boomers, right? 1997 to 2012 and 69.58 million. This is important because when we think about who we're speaking to, right, especially if you're older, remember that the people that came after the boomers are way more in population size, as well as if you're Gen X, right? Way more in population size than older generations. And so we need to be thinking about how are we speaking to millennials, and ultimately how are we speaking to Gen Z. Just an interesting fact about a percentage of the populations of the generations who are white. So obviously perspectives change. 82% of the boomer population in the United States was white. By the time Gen X was around, it was 70%, millennials 61%, and Gen Z 52%. So thinking about how we present who we're speaking to and what people care about, it's important to understand the actual makeup of the generations we're trying to talk to. This one's kind of an interesting one, especially if you happen to be a public system and you're trying to convince people to pay more, whatever it is. When we look at should government do more to solve our problems, Gen Z, 70% believe that the government should do more. Millennials, 64% believe that the government should do more, and 34% leave it to business. Gen X, 53% government should do more, 45% leave it to business. And boomers, 49% government should do more, leave it to business. All right, so pretty much even up. So again, when you're speaking to younger generations, they're more willing to hear from the government asking them to help the environment, to pay more, to keep waste under control, to pump out your septic tanks and so on, right? So just some interesting facts about the different generational differences. And then we have to think about, do they care about the same things? Does the elder woman, actually not even a boomer, a silent generation, does she care about the same things that this young family here does, right? So the elder one is probably thinking about healthcare and inheritance and where that money is going and her grandchildren, and the family on the right, much younger, is thinking about schooling, also healthcare, but in a different way, and so on. So every generation, every age group thinks about different things and cares about different things. So you really need to design for your audience. Since I don't really know who's in my audience, I thought I'd show a picture that the audience here should be able to relate to. And yes, that is a septic tank pumper pumping out into a manhole in Hawaii. And yes, it's legal, but we won't go into the entire story. Okay, so you have to design for your audience. And in so doing that, once you sort of understand who you're trying to reach, you want to develop a persona. Now, we gave a presentation on persona development Tuesday, I guess it was. And so that recording is available online, and we're not on the FCN website. And so we're not going to go deeply into it, but you develop a persona, which is a fictional representation of your audience, right? And normally you have more than one fictional representation because your audience is usually bigger than just one type of person. And you do it because you want to gain further insight into the community and the people that you're trying to convince. You want to understand their needs and motivation. Remember, you change people's minds by finding out what they care about. You want to understand their barriers, and you want to, based on that, develop strategies, tactics, and messaging that fit the personas. So if you were here on the Tuesday call, you might remember that we worked with 3 counties in the state of Washington: Whatcom, Skagit, and Snohomish. And their concerns were about keeping pet waste out of the watershed. And they found through DNA testing, actually, that the majority of the fecal coliform that was entering into their streams and waterways was actually coming from pet waste. And they asked us if we could help them come up with a messaging campaign that would address pet owners. And what they pretty much determined from that first initial exercise of understanding their audience was it was mostly young to middle-age-ish males that were going to be their target audience. And so they started to create a persona. And they started with the age, the gender, the occupation, and the home life. So their persona, their initial persona, it wasn't the only one, was a 29-year-old male. He had certifications and training as a machinist, and he works at Boeing, which is not unusual for the state of Washington. He's a single dad. He has 2 children, a 5-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. He has a cute pit bull Labrador mixed dog, and he lives in a 3-bedroom ranch-style house with a small yard. Now, this is a fictional presentation. We don't know this person, but still, we want to give him a name, and we want to draw a picture of him and his family. So there's Frank, all right? So that's Frank, our 29-year-old male with the 2 kids and the pit bull mix. So in non-working time, and we're all sort of imagining into Frank and his persona, he has to take care of the kids. He maintains his house and his car. And when his ex has the kids, he likes to play video games and he works out and he likes to hike. Okay, and he likes other outdoor sports as well. And what's important to him? What does he value? He values his time with his kids. That's the first and foremost important thing in his life. And then he really values the outdoors. He loves to hike. He loves to fish. He loves to hunt. He loves to be outside in the environment, and he values the environment for that. And what does he need or desire in relation to the opportunity? Now, remember, this is everything that was generated by the people who represented those counties that we worked with in Washington state. So they were imagining into their community member, Frank, right? And so what does he need and desire in relation to the opportunity? He wants to keep his kids and his dog healthy and happy. And he has to keep his costs down. He's acting as a single father. He's paying a little alimony, right? So he's always strapped and stretched. So this is Frank, and there was a little bit more in depth about him than this, but we imagined it of Frank. And now how are we going to help Frank achieve his needs and goals? We understand his life. We understand what he cares about. So how should the state of Washington and those 3 counties, how should they message Frank? So we went through the exercise of persona development and then campaign and messaging development, and they, with no formal training in messaging or advertising or anything, in one day, actually in a couple of hours, came up with the following. This is going to be the beginnings of their messaging campaign. It's not just mud they track inside, poop has feet, right? And so if any of you guys watched or read Family Circus growing up, they were going to take from the Family Circus little track, whatever, Jimmy, Bobby, can't even remember his name, but wandering through the house and how kids go outside, inside, track poop everywhere if there's poop. So, and the tagline is scoop the poo. They also said, don't let this be you. Don't let this be you, scoop the poo. Okay, and so the idea being is that you're bringing something unhealthy into the home. And then, is 5 minutes worth $500? But I only sniffed it. Dog poop can make your dog sick. Vets cost more than bags. Scoop your pup's poop, scoop the poo. Okay, so they came up with this just from one training. And the idea being is we're addressing Frank's concerns about money and about the health of his kids and the health of his dog, right? And helping him with what he cares most about, but also hoping that he buys into our strategy and sees that cleaning up the poo is probably the best way to prevent himself from having to pay more for vet and healthcare bills. Okay, so when you're doing a campaign, when you're trying to reach out to your audience, you need to make your point in multiple ways, especially if you have to do public meetings, and more than likely you will have to do public meetings. So research has shown that by and large, audiences will remember at most 30%, usually about 10% of any given presentation that they're watching. And ultimately, the more complex the presentation is or complicated, the less information is retained. And so you want to do things simply and straightforwardly and make sure that you're really just focused on a couple of major points. right? So I took this actually from a NOAA presentation on extreme weather events. You'll see that ultimately the pictures to the right don't really have anything to do with extreme weather events. And there's a lot of text that you more than likely are reading now rather than listening to me talk. So I'm going to fast forward on, right? And then their next slide was, are extreme weather events increasing? And they give you the picture of an IPCC report and more text, but they're not really answering the question, right? So if I wanted to teach people about extreme weather and whether or not they're increasing, I want to make it simple for you in the audience to remember things. I want to do it by making my point in several different ways. And I'm going to start by walking down through history with a little story, simple and fast. So from 1980 to 1989. In 1980, for those of you who are old enough, you might remember Who Done It, and Larry Hagman is JR in Dallas, and he was shot, I believe, and everyone was wondering who done it, and you had to wait until the fall. In the middle of the century, Madonna was making the break. She was out there. Why is she hot? And by the end of the century, the Rolling Stones kind of already looked old. And my God, they're on tour again this summer. And over that period of time, there were 33 extreme weather events in the United States, each one costing over $1 billion. This is NOAA data that is collected on extreme weather events. If we go from 1990 to 1999, the Soviet Union was falling apart in 1990. We jumped it. We're just going to get to that middle one. In 1995, Bill Gates was just coming to the fore. Microsoft was huge, and he was the master of the universe according to Time. And by 1999, the end of the world was going to happen through Y2K. And over that period of time, we had 57 extreme weather events, each one costing over $1 billion in that decade. From 2000 to 2009, those of you who were around back in those days remember Napster, where all of a sudden all this music became downloadable. It was pretty amazing. It was the first time, which seems weird now since we can download music with ease. By 2005, everybody was clamoring to buy a home, not that long ago. But by 2009, people were starting to lose their homes. And over that 10-year period of time, we had 67 extreme weather events, each one costing over $1 billion. From 2010 to 2019, in 2010, that whole fiscal crisis was carrying over into the next decade. Banks, states were going potentially bankrupt. But by the middle of the century, oh my gosh, the sharing economy first came to realization. And then by 2019, we were looking at a presidential election. And over that period of time, there were 131 extreme events, each one costing over $1 billion. So if we go from 2020 to 2024 in 4.5 years, don't really have to talk about what started at the beginning of 2020. Don't really have to talk about what was around 2022, 23, as we were hoping to return to normal. And by 2024, we're all just kind of wondering about the democracy, our democracy, and will it stand? And in that 4.5 period of time, we had 95 extreme weather events, each one costing over $1 billion. So I've told a little story for people who want to hear stories. For people that want to see charts and graphs and so on, I have this. And what you're looking at here, I'm not going to even try to explain the bars, which account for drought, wildfire, flooding, winter storms, freezes, severe storms, and tropical cyclones. All I really want you to see is that purple line, right? That's the point I'm trying to make with this. And then I kind of want to hit you over the head a little bit, right? So I'm going to go back over the data, but so that you can see it in a different way, right? So it looks like maybe that last bar is shorter, but yeah, not really, because in those 30 years before 2010, we had 157 events, weather events, each one costing over $1 billion. But in just 14.5 years, we've had 226. And that amounts to 2.6 trillion since 1980 in extreme weather events. So that's all I wanted you to take away, right? I don't need to explain why, because most chances are either people know it or they're not going to remember it. But if I want you to take away extreme weather events, how many they were and how costly they are, that's all you should be able and have to take away from that presentation. You want to simplify. You also want to use powerful visuals. So our mind is not a book. If I went to Yosemite, which sometimes I do, and I went to Mirror Lake, and I wake up in my tent in the morning, my mind doesn't look like this. Gosh, what a great day yesterday. We got up early and cooked some breakfast by the campfire and then hiked for an hour in the pre-dawn light before we got to our destination, which was Mirror Lake, when there was no one there and the lake was still and I could get a perfect shot in the best light with no people in the background. Yeah, that's not my mind. My mind is this, right? We think in visual. We process images far faster than text. Some say roughly it takes us 13 milliseconds to process an image. So if you look around the space where you're sitting right now, you have processed everything in your field of vision. If you tried to describe it, it could take a book, right? And so if I gave you a textual description, a plane figure with 4 equal straight sides and 4 right angles, it's simple, but it's a lot simpler to do this, right? The red square. So that's a description of a red square, because we don't think in descriptions. We don't think about a red square as we see it in the left. We think about it as we see it on the right. And so we also recall information presented as images 6 times more easily than text, right? We remember pictures and images. So if I said square, chances are you're thinking red square. And if I say triangle, you're probably thinking red triangle. If I said septic system, well, okay, so you all have your own ideas and images of it, but the fact remains is in your head, you are not describing it with words. You are imagining it as a picture, because that's how we think. You have to use powerful visuals to move your audience and your personas with your message. So here's some bad examples. I lived in San Francisco for a long time. Now I live across the bay from San Francisco, and I remember seeing this. Just push it, sweep, don't spray, it's a drought. Well, okay. I don't know what would move me to do anything by looking at a brush on a brick ground that would move me to want to follow what they're asking me to do. So it's not a real successful picture. Another one from San Francisco, I remember seeing this. Jiggle it. Okay. Shaking the handle won't fix the leak, even if you jiggle it. Repairing home plumbing leaks can save hundreds of gallons a day. First off, the picture is not exactly engaging, but also because the big words are jiggle it, most people don't read the small print, right? So that's the thing that they're going to think they need to do. They're not going to read the small print to figure out, actually, that's not what you're supposed to do, okay? So here's some good examples. This one's from Texas. Using your hose as a broom, you could be wasting 150 gallons a day. Okay, so obviously the picture is pretty powerful, showing how much water it takes to rinse off your ground. But also you can imagine that they created some sort of persona or imagined into their audience, because nothing in the picture is a mistake. So you have a homeowner, most likely, middle class, that's what the home looks like, concerned about bills and cares about conservation. So that's vaguely what a persona might look like for that ad. Okay, Paw Paw, Michigan, fecal coliform bacteria machine, scoop the poop, bag it, place it in the trash. Okay, nothing, well, some things do, but puppies engage people. When people see cute puppies, they look at the picture. If they're looking at the picture, then they're more likely to get them to read the language around it, right? So this is successful. It's also obviously targeted at a persona that is a pet owner, walks their dogs in the park, cares about clean parks, waters, and community because, well, puppies and their dogs. Okay, so those are pretty successful. And then this one, this is from the dorms in Boulder, Colorado. Don't let your water get wasted. Okay, so this is obviously, what'd you do last weekend? I got wasted. It's targeted at youth. Young people in the dorms, students enjoy partying, live in the dorms, care about the environment. Okay, so these are all targeted ads that are also using pretty powerful visuals to make you look and to make you read. So here's a good example of a water and wastewater upgrade effort from Regina, Ontario. It's a few years old, but they did a really great job of getting people to first kind of gather on and grab on to the idea of the bigger picture. When we're talking about water and wastewater, there's no substitute for water, okay? They followed it up with, there's no substitute for water. And they followed it up with, there's no substitute for water, right? And then they have language, as you can see below, your water system is our priority, but let's break down that language, right? So your water system is our priority, right? So rather than saying the water system or the wastewater district or the utilities district or whatever, they're making it about everyone and their own. The message, again, we share the challenge together. Aging water system requires major improvements to keep it running smoothly. We will invest, okay, $2 billion in our water, wastewater, and drainage system so we can maintain our city's quality of life. Investing in our quality of life, you've probably heard a few politicians say it, because you don't really have to define it. People will define it themselves, okay? And then we're making sure it's always there. We're ensuring our safe future. You can't live without water, right? So they made this about a higher issue, a bigger issue, quality of life, water, and it's all about ours and investing. We're not asking you to spend, we're asking you to invest in your future. Okay, so their words, their languaging are really strong on this. So once you have an idea of who your audience is, maybe you have a persona, you want to keep things simple. How do you structure your message? So there are lots of ways you can do it. These are just some basic steps. So these are 3 steps to creating a message. You want to state the problem, you want to promote an action, and you want to create a tagline. Okay, and the action doesn't have to be a big thing. The action can just be go to our website, right? But the problem should be something that kind of elevates the problem beyond we need to fix old infrastructure. Nobody responds well to we need to fix old infrastructure. They do respond to there's no substitute for water. There's no substitute for our children's health, right? So the bigger problem that results from not having adequate pipes, adequate septic, and so on is really where the problem lies. So if we go back to there's no substitute for water, and we look at how they framed everything, right? So there's your tagline. They went to what is the problem really about? Like I said, they could have said the city has an aging system, it's really old, we got to fix it, it's leaking and so on. But instead, there's no substitute for water. Wow, yes, we can all understand that. There isn't, right? What action are you asking them to take? They could have said the city will have to pay $2 billion for upgrades. But instead, they said invest in our future so we can maintain our quality of life. Right? So they kind of mixed the problem and the action in there, and they had some really successful languaging. So here's another example of the way in which you can message. So this is from New Jersey. So here's the problem. Rain washes pollutants into storm drains and directly into our lakes, rivers, and the oceans. So what can you do? Action, go to our website, right? And tagline, if you litter in the street, you might as well litter in the river. State of Washington also used this. When your pet goes on the lawn, remember, it doesn't just go on the lawn, right? So here's your problem. When our pets leave these little surprises, rain washes all that pet waste and bacteria into our storm drains and then pollutes our waterways. So what to do? Simple, dispose of it properly, preferably in the toilet. Not sure about that. Then that little surprise gets treated like it should. This is a little wordy. You might want a little less there, but they have stated the problem. I'm not really sure how many people are going to throw their dog poo in the toilet. The action, though, throw it in the toilet, and then again the tagline. Okay. Minnesota, using fertilizer. If it's in our streets, it's in our streams. Clean Water Minnesota, right? If it's in our streets, it's in our streams. Clean Water Minnesota. They've kept this very simple, and I think it's pretty powerful. They're not trying to explain everything. They're just saying, let's keep it clean, right? And then pet gotta go. If it's in our streets, it's in our streams, cleanwaterminnesota.org, okay? If it's in our streets, it's in our streams. So the only problem with this is, and I'm not sure where this marketing campaign started, but it's the same guy doing different things in every state with a different tagline, but they haven't changed the guy. So if you're gonna borrow from other states, or other communities or whatever, it's to your benefit to understand what your persona should be. So don't just take, probably whoever did this first identified that it was a middle-aged male, white, homeowner, suburban looks like, that was largely responsible for the problem, or at least one of them. That may not be the case in all of the states. So it's something that you want to think about if you're borrowing from other communities. Make sure that the persona matches your community, right? So you can borrow the language or you can change the language and you can take the idea, but when you're taking the same persona, you're in danger of not being able to reach the ones that you need to reach. Okay, so people act based on their own values and morals, right? We have to care. If we don't care, it's hard to change our minds. So this is why it needs to be personal, which is why we identify the audience and why we develop a persona to target. And then once you have all that down, you got to repeat everything. So maybe you've wondered, maybe you haven't, by why in your entire lifetime you've seen an ad for Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Chevy or whatever it is. It never goes away. It never ends. Advertising, marketing, a product, an action, any of that, it never stops. The minute it stops, people fall backwards and they stop doing what you want them to do. So if you undertake some kind of campaign, you have to stick with the idea that it's kind of for life, right? So if you're trying to get people to pump their septic systems, well, you can't just tell them once and you got a really good year and they all did it and then stop telling them to do it again, right? You have to keep doing it. You have to keep reminding people that they need to do what you want them to do. Okay, so here's just a good example. This is more about, well, this is all about water and drought. This was a campaign that went from 2006 to 2016 in Denver. Use only what you need. It's a multimedia campaign. And it's pretty powerful, actually. So they did installations. They targeted people that care about money. They targeted people that care and that have a good sense of humor and so on. I don't know if their personas were deep, but they did do multiple installations to reach multiple people in multiple different ways, pretty much with the same tagline, right? So the problem, water is wasted. This is how much water is wasted by running toilet in 3 months, okay? And then you've got the action, use only what you need, and the tagline is use only what you need, okay? And that was their campaign. Action and tagline are the same. Grass is dumb, water 2 minutes less, your lawn won't notice. Use only what you need. There's your tagline, okay? Grass is dumb, water 2 minutes less, your lawn won't notice. Use only what you need. And then stupid jokes. Who are you, Albert Einstein? I can't feel my feet. I never apologize. Anyhow, you can read this on your own. Why trash an old billboard when you can reuse it? Waste is out. Use only what you need. Okay, so this was a constant. Use only what you need, use only what you need, use only what you need, heard for over 10 years. Use only what you need, Denver Water. Use only what you need.org. And then as things got worse, so this is when the West was really gripped by a very intense drought, they changed use only what you need to use even less. And people, it was brilliant because people already knew what it meant. So they could actually change the tagline, but people had seen use only what you need for so long, use even less resonated immediately. Okay. And then the official sprinkler of summer 2013, use even less. Okay, and there are, you can go to the Denver Water site and actually see some other examples. It's a great advertising campaign. Another one is the Don't Mess with Texas Waste campaign. To be perfectly honest, I haven't seen a great wastewater campaign. That's a tough one, but we're trying to help a couple different communities build campaigns around septic maintenance and care and so on. And so hopefully in a year or two, we'll be able to come back with an effective campaign around that issue. But the Don't Mess with Texas Waste campaign was developed at least 20 years ago. And they tested a lot of different taglines: keep Texas beautiful, deep in the heart of Texas, whatever resonated with Texans. But after doing audience assessment, persona assessment, they realized that the ones responsible for throwing waste out of their trucks along the roadside, because that was largely what the campaign was about, was young males, about ages 20 to 30, 35. And so that became their target. And Don't Mess with Texas really resonated with that age group and that gender, okay? And so the ads themselves become edgy, something that a guy would potentially relate to, right? So keep your butts in the vehicle at all times. Don't mess with Texas. This one, for someone not from Texas, myself, is a little odd to me. If your mother were Texas, would you still litter? But it's effective. And you'll note that in this one, she has brunette hair and is probably Latino. In the next one, it's the same exact woman with the same exact language, but they just changed the image and her look to look white, right? Yeah, don't forget, we're targeting young males, Eva Longoria. I'm proud of my home state, some Instagram posts to make sure that it reaches out to young males. Kelly Clarkson, born and raised Texan, y'all, don't mess with my house, okay? And then they go for the young, right? K through 12 art contest. So everything from kindergarten, don't mess with Texas, to I don't know what grade this is, probably somewhere around maybe 5th or 6th grade, and so on. So yeah, obviously Don't Mess with Texas and Denver are both pretty high-end campaigns and maybe a little bit expensive too. And yeah, they hired consultants. And yes, they did a lot of public assessment, surveys, and so on to really narrow things down. What if you can't afford a consultant and a graphic artist? Which is true of a lot of us. So I can hear some of you cringing already, even though I can't hear anybody. But this is something we've been playing with recently. It's relatively new to us and to many, but you might want to try a little artificial intelligence. Okay, and let me show you how that works. So using artificial intelligence to build your campaign, and I will explain this picture at the end. So there are, and I'm sure there are many, but we have identified 2 free image designers. And one is called Copilot Designer. It's done by Microsoft, and you basically, I think you have to have a Microsoft identification in order to sign into that one. And the other one is Image FX AI, and you have to have a Google account in order to sign into those, but they are free, right? And I used Copilot Designer with Microsoft to generate the image that you see to the right. It does do some weird stuff, like there's some weird hieroglyphic writing that's included in this, and I'm not sure why, but it does do some weird stuff. A lot of this is still in the beta space, so it's not completely tested, but it is fun. Okay. So links to both of these sites are in the handout that is attached to this, so you can go to them at your leisure and use them at your leisure. So Copilot Designer, like I said, this is how I generated this particular picture. And I just went there and I used the description, a gloved hand is picking up a dirty baby white from a wooded stream in the morning. Okay. And that's the picture I got. So it's pretty powerful, actually. I tried other language that didn't work as well. Sometimes it gets pretty gross when you're talking about dirty baby wipes. I tried one coming out of a toilet, but you don't even want to see that picture. But yeah, you can generate some pretty professional shots. Okay, so we worked with a tribe in the Southwest with AI to see what we could do with them to help them around waste that was getting into their streams, but also just dumped in the desert and so on. So this was what I gave the generator. A male elder from the tribe tries to pick up garbage dumped in the desert next to a saguaro cactus with mountains and a river in the background. You want to give it a lot of information. You have to kind of tease around the information that you're trying to generate. Because like I said, sometimes it gives you a really strange picture. Other times it's almost there, but not quite. You have to keep playing with it and change your description. Okay. But Copilot Designer gave me these 2 photos, sort of photos. But each one of them is pretty good, actually, and close to what that reservation looks like. And I will also add, when you generate your own pictures, they are yours, right? So you're not borrowing from somewhere, or you're not taking from somewhere, you're not risking the chance of getting sued for having a picture that you took from, say, Google Images, right? So that's Copilot Designer. I tried doing the same description with ImageFX, but I added one watercolor to give it a watercolor effect, and the other one I wanted a oil painting effect. So this is the watercolor effect with the same description, but under ImageFX, right? So it gives something very different. And then that was with the oil painting effect. So you can kind of do some pretty neat things with this. You can ask it to do it like a watercolor. You can ask it to do it like a sketch. You can ask it to do sci-fi, which will give you something really strange and weird. So you can do also and photorealism and so on. So you can put a slant on all of this to generate the kind of picture you want to generate. And then you'll learn over time. Sometimes I ask for a big sky because I want to be able to put print in it. And a big sky is a good space to be able to put print so it's not conflicting with the complexity of the picture below it. So once you've got some pictures you like, you can generate some language. So yeah, you don't have time to figure out what a marketing campaign would look like or whatever. So instead, there are two free options here. Again, this is in your handout. There's Google Gemini and there's ChatGPT, which some of you may have heard about, OpenAI. So ChatGPT has two things. You can pay for it, or you can get OpenAI, which is free, okay? And so I think I used ChatGPT for both of these. I asked it, I want to create marketing language to persuade tribal elders to better manage their old septic systems to prevent human waste from overflowing into their homes and yards. So that's what I asked ChatGPT. It gave me a bunch of taglines and sort of the problem. Healthy land, healthy homes. Take care of your septic system. For generations to come, protect our water with smart septic care. Strong families, strong systems. Septic maintenance made easy. Okay, so this is all generated by ChatGPT just based on what's in yellow above. And then it gave me an action. Together, we can ensure clean water for our families, plants, and animals. Let's be smart about septic system management. So this is actually pretty good. It's surprising how good it can be. So it's worth your time to just see what you can generate. Ask it to create a marketing language around something. If you ask it to create a campaign, it will also give you the steps that you would want to go through to build the campaign, which would include not just language, but outreach and so on, building language, billboards, and community meetings and things like that. It'll give you the steps for that as well. Okay, so I liked for generations to come, protect our water with smart septic care. And then I used Canva, right? So this is kind of a three-part thing. Canva is cheap. It's a graphic app that can make really good flyers and things like that. It's easy to use. I think you can use it for free too, but you just don't get as many options. But I used Canva to create this. And it took me, I don't know, about a half hour altogether. So for generations to come, protect our water with smart septic care. Together, we can ensure clean water for our families, plants, and animals. Let's be smart about septic system management. So this is pretty general. You could actually, instead of we want to convince the community too, we could say we want to convince young people to do the following or elders to do the following, right? So that you can start to target generations and populations and your personas. So how about I want a messaging campaign language that teaches people not to throw baby wipes down the toilet. I asked ChatGPT for that. I got some taglines: flush responsibly, keep it clean, protect our pipes. Okay, pretty good actually. And then the action: protect the planet. Every flush sends baby wipes on a journey that ends in our oceans, harming marine life and polluting precious water sources. Maybe not every flush, but anyhow, that's the language that ChatGPT gave me. I put it together with the description where a gloved hand is picking up, but in that case by the ocean, and I get flush responsibly, protect the planet, so on and so forth, right? And I generated this in Canva. And again, this took me about a half hour, okay? So I get it if people are cringing right now saying, I'm not ever gonna use AI and I don't believe in AI, but it actually can generate cheaply and for free in many cases things like this that actually can resonate with the community you're trying to target. Although you still have to understand who you're trying to target, you still need to understand your audience, okay? So thank you and have fun. Back to the picture where I started with AI. The description I gave for this is a leaking elder septic tank is teaching younger and baby septic tanks how to be better stewards of the environment. As I said, sometimes it gets weird. We got a guy who's kind of growing out of the fence. I have no idea what AppChap means, but you can have fun with it too and just play around, keep changing the description, see what you get, see what you like, and eventually you kind of learn how to tweak it to get the kind of picture that you want. The language is a little bit easier than that. So, any questions?
I don't see any quite yet, but I'll give a moment for questions to start rolling in. But I just want to say those images are incredible. AI really can generate very useful things and tools. So
It's scary.
it's
Scary, especially scary for people that are in the arts and are paid to generate those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, still I'm not seeing any questions, but I'm seeing a lot of feedback saying great presentation, great examples.
Okay.
All right.
I get it.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has questions, send them through, but are there any further points or anything else you'd like to mention, Sarah, before we might close out this webinar early if no questions come through?
I think we're pretty good. Just, if people are interested in kind of pursuing the whole process of identifying why people won't do what you want them to do, and then also how to get them to do what you want them to do, and moving forward with a whole sort of communications training that we can help you generate and like create your persona, all of that. We are happy to help because we're part of that grant and we can do that for free. So reach out.
All right. Well, still nothing, so I'll kind of give a little closing statement here. Well, first, thank you, Sarah, for such an insightful and captivating presentation. And thank you, Kathleen, for being on here to support us today as well. For everyone attending, following this webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with the slides from today, as well as the handouts and a link to the recording. We ask that you please complete the webinar evaluation following the webinar so you can let us know your thoughts on today's session, as this helps us plan future webinars on topics important to you. So there's still no questions, so thank you all again, and we hope to see you at future EFCN events.
Thank you.